All right, so today we're diving into the world of stand-up comedy
Yeah.
with this rising star, Ralph Barbosa.
Okay.
We're going to be dissecting his recent conversation with Joe Rogan
Right.
on the Joe Rogan Experience.
I love that episode.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really great look into the comedy world, especially for our listeners who are interested in the business side
Absolutely.
and the creative process behind the laughs.
Yeah. It's interesting to hear how these guys tick.
Totally. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting was Barbosa's take on finding your comedic voice.
Yeah, that's such a crucial thing in such a competitive field. And it's, he talks about starting out emulating bigger names, even doing a bit of a Richard Jenny.
Oh, wow.
Back in the day.
Really?
Yeah.
Like a straight up imitation or just...
I think everybody starts out doing that a little bit,
Sure.
But yeah, he talks about, obviously you got to find your own voice to stand out.
Totally. It's like that old saying, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery.
Right.
But to really make it, you gotta
be yourself. Yeah.
You gotta be authentic. And he has this really interesting comparison where he likens finding your voice to Bruce Lee's philosophy of having no technique.
Okay, hold on. How does Bruce Lee play into stand-up comedy?
So Bruce Lee believed that by mastering the fundamentals of martial arts, you could transcend anyone's style, right? And be adaptable to any opponent.
Oh, interesting.
So I think Barbosa applies that to comedy, where it's you got to master joke writing, timing, delivery, but ultimately your unique voice comes out when you're not confined to just doing one style. So it's mastering the fundamentals, but then letting your own natural instincts kind of take over from there.
Yeah, and it's really interesting how he contrasts different comedic voices, too, because he describes Joey Diaz as this high-octane machine that's hitting 9,000 RPMs, while other comics are redlining at 7,000.
That is such a perfect way to describe Joey Diaz.
Isn't it?
That visual of him just
And you can hear the audience.
Redlining. Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
But, he clearly appreciates that style, but then he also recognizes the value of other approaches. When he compares Diaz to clean comedians like Jim Gaffigan and Brian Regan.
Yeah.
He highlights this diversity within the comedy landscape.
Totally. It's you can enjoy a really good 5-star meal.
Right.
But sometimes you just want a big old juicy burger. Totally. Yeah. And they both hit the spot in different ways.
Exactly.
And Barbosa kind of goes even deeper into this idea when he talks about the legendary Bill Hicks.
Okay. Yeah.
Who, pre-internet was really known for this kind of social commentary intellectualism in his routines.
Totally different than a Joey Diaz set.
Very different. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And Barbosa recognizes Hicks's impact and influence, but also notes that not every comedian needs to be this social commentator. There's room for all kinds of voices.
Yeah, totally. And speaking of different voices, did you hear about his experience at that Satanist gathering?
Oh my God.
Who knew?
I love that story.
It's a thing.
It's hilarious.
I had no idea.
Yeah, and it speaks to his willingness to kind of step outside of his comfort zone,
And find humor in the unexpected.
Exactly.
Talk about finding material.
Right?
Who would have thought? That's amazing.
But it also speaks to this idea of observation, comedy comes from seeing the world through this comedic lens.
Oh, absolutely.
And he's clearly observing everything.
Yeah.
And it's not just the world at large, it's also the people in it. He talks about this childhood friend who he said was naturally hilarious, a young Norm Macdonald.
Oh, wow. That's high praise.
It is high praise.
I love Norm Macdonald.
Yeah.
That deadpan.
So funny.
So good.
And Barbosa sees that spark in his friend and encourages him to try stand-up, even gives him stage time.
Oh, that's awesome.
I know. It's really cool to see that kind of generosity.
Totally.
Yeah.
Especially in such a competitive field.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's nice to see that camaraderie.
Yeah, for sure.
And that mentorship almost.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's not just about encouraging other comics. He has some really interesting insights about the business side of comedy, especially in today's world.
Yeah, the business has changed so much, even in the last 5 or 10 years.
Totally.
Right?
Social media and podcasts have completely changed the game.
Oh, absolutely. It's not just about grinding it out in the clubs, hoping to get noticed anymore.
Right. You can go viral overnight.
Exactly.
And that can launch a career.
Totally. And Barbosa actually talks about this. He mentions his trajectory really took off after his podcast started gaining traction.
Interesting.
Yeah. And he tells a funny story about this comedian, Brian Simpson.
Okay.
Barbosa was supposed to open for him in early 2022, but within a few months, he was headlining his own shows.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wild.
It is wild.
It's crazy how fast things can move.
It is, but I think Barbosa also emphasizes that even with all these new avenues, the key is still putting in the work, honing your craft.
Oh, for sure. You can get that 15 minutes of
Yeah.
fame, but to actually build a career,
Totally.
it's got to
mean,
be there.
It's got to be there.
You got to have the substance.
And he talks about, like, you know, doing this long run of shows in San Antonio, playing mainly to his core Hispanic audience.
Yeah.
And he realized he wasn't really being challenged, you know.
It's easy to get comfortable,
It is so easy to get comfortable.
especially when you're getting laughs.
Oh, yeah.
But you need that.
You need that friction.
Yeah, you need that.
Yeah, push.
Yeah, that push.
To really grow.
To grow.
Yeah, he wanted to test his material on more diverse crowds, you know?
Right. See how it lands with different perspectives.
Absolutely. And I think that just shows, like, his drive, you know,
Sure.
to constantly challenge himself.
It's like the mark of a true artist.
Totally.
Like, you're not afraid to put yourself out there.
Absolutely. And he also talks about feeling kind of stifled by the Dallas comedy scene, you know, earlier in his career.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like it was a little bit of a small pond.
Sure.
So of course he does what any ambitious comic would do, heads to New York City,
Of course. The heart of it all.
crashes on a friend's couch,
Yeah.
just fully immerses himself in that legendary comedy scene.
Like paying your dues
Totally.
in those formative years.
Yeah, and he's really honest about, like, the less glamorous side of it too.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You know, the constant battle with anxiety,
Of course.
dealing with hecklers.
Yeah, who wants to deal with hecklers?
Yeah. Nobody wants to deal with hecklers, but, you know, it's part of it.
It's part of the game.
It's part of the game. And, you know, I think he handles it all with a really refreshing perspective.
Totally.
Like, he's not afraid to talk about the struggles, but it doesn't overshadow his love for it.
Totally. Yeah, it's inspiring.
It is.
It is.
Yeah. And one thing I found really interesting was his take on handling negativity.
Yeah, because, that comes with the territory.
Absolutely. Especially today with social media.
Oh my gosh, it's a different world.
It's a whole other beast. And he talks about stepping back from social media a bit, you know?
That's probably smart.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Not engaging with every comment or criticism.
Yeah, you can get sucked in.
So easily.
Yeah, and then it's just like a vortex.
A total vortex. And it's important to prioritize, your own well-being.
Totally mental and emotional health.
Absolutely. Especially in a field as, like, personal as comedy.
Yeah, because you're putting yourself out there.
You really are.
Yeah, in a very real way.
Totally. And it's also cool to hear how grounded he remains despite his success.
Totally.
Like, he talks about making sure to hang out with friends who aren't comedians.
Which is so important, I think, to get that outside perspective.
Oh, it's crucial because it's so easy to get caught up in that bubble.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's like we're all in this together type of vibe.
Exactly.
And it's like, no, you got to get out.
Get out of the bubble.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And speaking of connections, he tells some really heartwarming stories about his family.
Oh, yeah. He's got a great family.
Like his dad sounds like quite a character.
Oh, yeah. His dad's story is incredible. Going from prison to building his dream house.
I know, it was amazing.
And running a successful business.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's really inspiring.
It's like a testament to like the human spirit.
It really is.
You can overcome.
Absolutely.
And
his stories about his uncles.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, hilarious.
One who had a tiger.
I know who does that.
I mean, come on.
It's wild.
And the other one, the Grandmaster Painter.
The Grandmaster Painter.
Those are characters.
They sound like characters out of a movie.
Totally. And it's funny because Barbosa himself has a background in painting.
Oh yeah, that's right. He does.
He talks about like the process, the different techniques, even the health risks.
It makes you wonder how much that informs his comedy.
Oh, for sure.
The attention to detail.
Yeah.
The craftsmanship.
Totally. It's that same creative drive.
Absolutely.
Finding different outlets for that energy.
Although he does say he found his teenage job at his dad's car wash incredibly boring.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
can't blame him.
Who wants to work at a car wash?
Right.
It's kind of like...
But it makes his passion for comedy all the more, like, striking.
Oh, totally. It's like he found that thing.
He did.
That really lights him up.
Yeah, and even with all the success, he doesn't shy away from talking about his anxieties and fears either.
Really?
Yeah, he's surprisingly candid about his fear of sharks.
Sharks? Come on. Everybody's afraid of sharks.
I know, but you don't hear comedians talk about it very often.
That's true.
Right.
That's a good point.
And his distrust of technology and just like his tendency to overthink things.
I mean, who doesn't overthink things these days? It's so easy to get in your head about stuff,
Right.
but I think there's something kind of refreshing about it.
Totally.
You know, it makes him relatable.
It makes him human.
Exactly.
And he's pretty open about, like, bigger picture anxieties, too, right? Like, he talks about that whole submarine thing.
Oh, yeah. The one where those people died trying to see the Titanic.
Yeah.
So sad.
Really puts things in perspective.
It does.
Yeah.
You know, money and tech can only take you so far.
For real. And, like, he even jokes about wolves, like, figuring out algorithms and using them against us.
Oh my God, that's terrifying.
Right? It's, like, funny, but also, like...
Little too real.
Yeah.
Especially these days.
Makes you think?
It does. But, hey, at least he wants a Batmobile.
Oh, who doesn't want a Batmobile?
True. Come on. That's like...
Yeah, exactly. And then he's talking about being launched into a black hole.
Okay, that's a little intense.
I know, right? Like, talk about going all in on space exploration.
He doesn't do anything halfway, does he?
He's not afraid of big experiences, that's for sure.
You gotta admire that. But it's cool that he also seems to value, like, finding balance, you know?
Yeah, totally. Like, he talks about just chilling in nature, fishing with friends.
It's like he needs that to balance out all the craziness.
For sure.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like you need those moments of peace.
Absolutely.
Ooh.
Speaking of craziness, did you hear about the Satanist gathering?
Wait, what?
I know, right?
Seriously?
He went to a Satanist gathering with Duncan Trussell.
No way. What happens at a Satanist gathering?
Well, according to Barbosa, they were off the rails, looking at life through a water-covered shower door.
I don't even know what that means.
Me neither. Honestly, you kind of had to be there.
I guess so.
Duncan even did stand up for them.
Get out of here.
Yeah,
Only Barbosa.
I know, right?
That's amazing.
The stories this guy has.
It's like he finds humor everywhere.
He really does. It's kind of inspiring.
Totally.
Yeah.
So, like, big picture, what's your biggest takeaway from all this?
You know, it's funny because he's like a product of this moment in time, right? Social media, podcasts, all that.
Totally.
But he also seems to get that real world connection is important.
He's like riding the wave, but staying grounded.
Exactly. And I love that he's so open about his anxieties.
Makes him relatable.
Totally. And his comedic style is just so unique.
He's got that sharp observation, the personal stuff, but then he's not afraid to get weird.
He's not.
And it works. He makes you think, but you're always laughing.
Exactly. It's a good combo.
It really is.
Oh, what? I feel like we've learned a lot today.
Me too.
About comedy, about technology, about wolves.
Don't forget the wolves.
Don't worry, I won't.
They're out there.
They're listening.
Always listening.
All right, everybody. Thanks for diving in with us today.
Catch you next time.